questions are probably the best way to start conversations and improve your speaking. But can you form them correctly in English? We'll help you ask better questions on this episode of
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hello and welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching English between us, we're going to help you improve your English and take your pronunciation, your grammar, your question formation, and all aspects of your English up to the next level. How are you doing, Reza?
I'm fine, Craig. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much. I'm excited to be podcasting again with you this week. And if you're a new listener, you're very welcome to the podcast. Hello. And also if you're a regular listener, thank you for listening again this week. Reza, questions. Let's start with something fairly basic that most listeners may already know, the yes-no questions. What are yes-no questions?
So a yes-no question is, as it implies, a question which requires the answer yes or no. So how can you spot one? How can you spot one? Well, they start with an auxiliary or a modal verb. There's no question word. For example, Craig, can you speak Spanish?
Yes, badly.
But he can't speak. So he did say yes. So the answer had to either be yes or no. Yes, I can, or no, I can't. That is a yes-no question.
Did you notice when Reza asked me that question, can you speak Spanish? His voice went up. Now, usually in course books and English books, you see with yes-no questions, you use rising intonation, which means your voice goes up like that at the end. So you ask the question, can you speak Spanish? Or can you swim? So very often the voice goes up at the end. Can you swim?
Yes, I can.
See, there my voice went down. So it doesn't always necessarily go up, but very often it does. The voice goes up, it rises when you ask a yes-no question.
Did you notice the order of the words there? Can you speak Spanish? I started with the modal auxiliary can. If this were a affirmative, a positive statement, I might say, for example, I can speak Spanish. I begin with the subject I, and then the modal can, then speak, etc. But the order of a question is to begin with the auxiliary or the modal. So can first, then you, and then the main verb. Can you speak Spanish? I've got another question for you, Craig. Do you live in Valencia?
Yes, I do.
So we started with do, auxiliary, then the subject you, then the main verb live, etc. Craig, did you have any pets when you were a child?
Yes, I had a dog called Timmy.
Craig, you know what I'm going to ask now, don't you? Have you ever visited Disneyland and possibly seen Mickey Mouse?
I was waiting for the Mickey Mouse question. Yeah, that was a question with the auxiliary verb have. Have you ever visited Disneyland? Yes, I have. I was about 18 at the time, and I just remember very, very long queues, very hot weather, spending a lot of money and not seeing Mickey Mouse. Have you visited Disneyland?
I'm afraid I haven't. No. I'd love to go someday.
Let me ask you another question, Reza, with a different modal verb. Should everyone vote in elections?
Oh, that's a good question. Personally, I think you should only vote if you want to.
I agree. In a democracy, you also have the right not to vote, which is also demonstrating that you're not happy with the choices you have. So I agree.
Craig, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Imagine, I want to have English lessons.
You need them.
I need them, as you could tell. And the problem is, I can't travel to classes. I live in a village in quite a remote area, but I do have an internet connection. Can you help me find a teacher?
I can't personally, but our wonderful sponsors italki can help you. Italki is a website that connects you the language student, with a qualified English teacher from anywhere really in the world. So whether you're looking for an American speaker or a British English speaker, you'll be able to find a teacher that suits your needs on the italki platform. There are many different teachers. You can look at reviews from previous students, and you can watch a video introduction so that you get an idea of the teacher before you begin studying. Italki are offering $10 free as soon as you pay for your first lesson, so you get some financial help as soon as you start studying. And of course, there are many different prices depending on the teacher you choose. And you can change your teacher as well if you're not completely happy with the teacher in the beginning. So there's lots of choices, and it's a very good way of remotely practicing and improving your English. For more information, go to inglespodcast.com/275. Click the italki link in the show notes, and that will take you directly to the italki webpage where you will find more information. And Reza and I would like to thank italki very much for sponsoring this podcast.
A question you might well hear in Ireland a lot could be this: must we eat potatoes again today, Paddy?
Can you say that a bit slower? Your accent might be confusing.
Must we eat potatoes again today, Paddy?
Paddy's a name, yeah?
Paddy is the short form of Patrick, and a very, very common name in Ireland. Ireland, where we are famous for eating lots of potatoes. So there I've used the modal must we. Is it obligatory? Must we eat potatoes again today, Paddy?
Must you always ask me about Mickey Mouse?
I'm afraid I must.
Another question with an auxiliary verb, this time will. Will you help me, please?
Sure. How can I be of assistance?
Another question, will you go out tonight?
Yes, although it depends where you're going.
Do you think it's common to use that when you ask about the future? Will you go out tonight? Will you have fun at the weekend? Will you study tomorrow?
Not so common, but in the first question when I said, will you help me please? That use of will is common because it's a request. I'm requesting, I'm asking for your help, and it's typical to use will for that.
That's right. And with my question, will you go out tonight? I was asking Reza if he has any plans, any arrangements, quedado con alguien. So it's more common to use the present continuous to ask about future plans. So, are you going out tonight? Would be a better question. Or, are you studying in the morning? So use present continuous when you're asking about future plans.
So far, just to recap, just to go over again what we've mentioned, we have asked yes/no questions starting with an auxiliary or a modal verb. Can, do, did, have, should, will, must, etc. But of course, you can also ask a yes/no question with the verb to be. And the verb to be is a special verb. It doesn't need an auxiliary. Craig, can you think of any examples?
Are you Scottish?
No, I'm not. I'm Irish. Although I do have Scottish ancestors.
Are you hungry?
Craig, I'm always hungry. What
too.
about you?
Oh, yeah, me too, always, constantly. Are you thirsty?
I'm quite thirsty because it's hot at the minute, yeah.
And what about Coco? Is he hungry?
Yes, Coco's always hungry, without any doubt.
So, of course, we could also change to the past tense of the verb to be and use were. For example, Reza, were you at home last night or did you go out?
I was at home all night with Coco. Craig, I could say to my girlfriend, would you be home for tea, darling? And what might she answer? Would you be home for tea, darling?
Yes, love, of course.
Darling is like cariño.
Another question, have you been here long? That's a question that the Queen might ask when you meet her. You know, when the Queen meets so many people and there's a long line of people and the Queen of England is shaking their hands and smiling and greeting and meeting people. And a very common question from the Queen is, have you come far? Have you come far today? That's a common question that the Queen asks. Reza, have you come far today?
About 40-minute bus journey, so not too far.
So those are yes-no questions. One thing about yes-no questions, they're not the best kind of questions for having a conversation or developing a conversation. Why? Because the answer is yes or no. It's much better to ask a WH question, what we call WH question, which often has a wider, more developed answer, not only yes or no.
Why do we call them WH questions?
Because most of the question words we use begin with WH. For example, what, where, when, why, which, who, whose. And strangely, we also include how, which begins with an H, not WH, but that's regarded as a WH word or WH question.
Yeah, and you can also add a word after what. You can add a noun, for example, what color, what size, what country. And after the word how, it's very common to add an adjective, like how old are you? Or an adverb, how quickly? Or a quantifier. We'll talk more about this in detail later, but a quantifier tells you how much or how many or how little or how few.
How old is your flat?
Ooh, I think it's about 60 years old.
About the same age as mine, I think. Yeah. From the 1960s or 1970s?
Or late 50s maybe, yeah. Craig, let's practice a bit with information questions. So the answer is not yes or no. The answer must be information. Where do you live?
I live by the sea in Valencia, near the sea.
I suppose you noticed there, listeners, that my first word was the question word, where. So earlier in our yes-no questions, we didn't have a question word. So the first word was an auxiliary, do, did, have, or the verb to be, are, is, etc. But here we begin with the question word before the auxiliary. Where do you live?
Or when do you get up? Reza, when do you get up?
It depends on the day, Craig. I usually get up at around 8 o'clock.
Yeah, same here. Sometimes earlier, sometimes later. Notice with my question, this time the intonation went down. And it's very common for WH questions to have falling intonation where the voice drops, it goes down. When do you get up? Where do you live? It's not always true, but it is very common. Can you think of any more questions, Reza?
Yeah, we could have one with the verb to be, for example. So we don't need an auxiliary with that. What was it? For example, imagine I heard a strange sound. What was it? What was it? Craig, where were you born?
I was born in Twickenham, which is a suburb of London. Where were you born?
I was born in a place called Lisburn, which is near Belfast.
Notice that Reza asked me first, where were you born? With falling intonation. But when I asked him the same question, I emphasized the pronoun you. So Reza said, where were you born? And I said, where were you born? Where were you born? Emphasize that pronoun when you return the same question.
Yeah, and really, you can emphasize any word you want in a question. For example, compare these. Craig, when's your birthday?
May 25th.
And Craig now could say to me,
when's your birthday?
And now he's stressing the word your. I emphasize the word when. And imagine I ask someone, where were you born? Where do you live? Lots of different questions. And then my final question is, and when's your birthday? And I stress the word birthday because I've asked them lots of different things. And now I want to stress that this information I want is the birthday. So actually, you can stress any word you want, really, in a question.
Yeah, if I ask Reza, where were you born? And he answers Valencia, well, I know he wasn't born in Valencia because he speaks English really, really well. And I know he's not from here. So maybe he did not understand the question. So I will emphasize the important word when I repeat the question. No, where were you born? not where do you live, where were you born? So you'd emphasize that word if you repeat the question.
A word which often causes a bit of trouble with foreign speakers of English is the word whose. That's WHOSE. That's another question word, but it's not exactly the same as who, because who is just quién, which person, but whose is the possessive. It means of which person, of whom. Imagine Craig borrowed a book, but I don't know who gave him the book. I could say, Craig, whose book did you borrow?
I borrowed Paul's.
So whose means of whom.
Which is another WH word, question word. For example, which has she chosen, the red or the blue paint? Reza, which has she chosen, the red or the blue paint? This is where there's a choice and you're choosing between two or more things. So for your kitchen, Reza, which has she chosen, red or blue paint?
Well, Craig, I don't know which she's chosen, but I know which I've just chosen when I've been doing up my flat. I've chosen white paint. So neither red nor blue. For my kitchen recently done up reformado, I've chosen white paint.
Which colour have you chosen for the bedroom?
Everything white. Keep it simple.
Good choice.
As we mentioned earlier, with the word how, you can add an extra word. It could be an adjective, an adverb, or a quantifier. Craig, how old are you?
I'm the wrong side of 50.
The wrong side. So if 50 is the dividing line, 49 would be on one side. That's the good side.
That's the good side.
But unfortunately, Craig is on the other side, 51 plus.
Reza, how quickly can you run? There's a question with an adverb, quickly. How quickly can you run?
Not very quickly, for about a minute. And then after that, I can't run at all. Craig, how much is that microphone worth? How much is it? How much did you pay for that?
I paid, I think, 45 or 50 euros for this microphone.
So there I used the quantifier, how much. So you can say how much, uncountable, how many, countable, or how little, the opposite of much, uncountable, or how few, the opposite of many, countable.
Here's another question, this time with a noun, the noun time. Reza, what time does the match start?
The match starts at 3 o'clock.
And another example, this time with the noun nationality. So what nationality are the finalists?
Ooh, I don't know.
Me neither.
I wouldn't be surprised if one of them is Spanish. The other, I don't know.
So there you have a summary of how to use WH questions and yes-no questions. Again, the WH questions will hopefully cause more conversation. So perhaps ask a yes-no question first and then follow up or continue with a wider WH question. It's wider because the answer is not just yes or no. Usually the answer is longer and then you can continue the conversation.
So let's practice a bit.
Let's practice. Did you work yesterday?
Yes, I did.
And how many hours do you usually work per day?
That's a difficult question to answer. It varies a lot with me. Let's say an average of about 6 or 7 hours a day.
So did you notice my first question was yes, no? Did you work yesterday? And then the second one, he needed a longer answer. So how many hours do you usually work? Let's try a different topic. Are you doing any exercise at the moment, Reza?
Yes, as ever, I do exercise every day.
And what's your favorite kind of exercise?
Walking, because it's nice and easy. And you can see interesting things as you're walking down the street.
So do you go out regularly every day walking as a way of doing exercise or just as part of your life? I mean, do you go to do the shopping, you go out in your area to do things, that's your exercise? Or do you go out for 1 hour's walking whether or not you have to do something?
I go out whether I have to do something or not for about half an hour. Although very often I have to go out because Coco needs his walk.
Oh, of course, you walk Coco, yeah. Yeah.
That's my favorite exercise, walking Coco.
Ask me something about food.
Do you eat a lot, Craig?
Yes, I eat too much.
How often have you tried to go on a diet?
More times than I can count. I think probably, every few months I try to get back on the diet that I started 30 years ago. So yeah, it's an ongoing challenge. Do you watch Netflix, Reza?
Yes, I do.
What are you watching at the moment?
Well, at the moment, not much because I've been really busy. But I think now, starting in a day or two, I will have the chance to watch the latest episodes of Black Mirror, which is something I really like.
Yeah, they're very, very good. I've seen them. I definitely recommend the latest episodes.
Craig, what about podcasts? We'll not talk about our podcast just for once. Do you listen to many podcasts, Craig?
Yes, I do.
Which topics interest you most?
Many different topics, but there's one I'll recommend called Radio Lab. Radio Lab. I'll put a link in the show notes. I like it for several reasons. It's very interesting. The topics are sometimes about technology, but human interest subjects that are very interesting to me. And also the way it's edited and put together. Put together means constructed. The way they edit sounds together and cut and edit people's voices is very, very creative. And it's one of the most creative podcasts I've ever heard. Radio Lab. You should try it. It's very, very good.
Craig, let's talk about health. Do you feel well?
No, not really. I feel tired. The heat is affecting me. I'm very, very busy at the moment, so I'm not exercising. And I'm really, really looking forward to next month when I can take life a bit slower, take care of my health and have a bit of a rest. What about you?
I feel okay, I must say. A little bit tired because of the heat, but apart from that, I'm all right.
Music. Do you like chill out?
Yes, sometimes. In the background. It's not a type of music that I would sit down and make a big effort to listen to. But if I was in a cafe or a bar or somewhere nice and I heard it in the background, I would enjoy that. What about you?
I like chill out very much, and the same as you. I like listening to it when I'm in a bar or socializing, or maybe as background music while I'm working. Yeah.
Craig, I know that you like travel a lot. You like going on holidays. Do you have a holiday planned for the summer?
Yes, I do.
Where are you going to go?
I'm going to Ethiopia.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's a 3-week tour of the country. I'm very much looking forward to it.
And why did you choose Ethiopia?
It's a country I've always wanted to visit and learn about. It's got a wonderful history and it's very diverse, which means different areas of the country have different scenery, different climate. The north is very green and very mountainous. Mountainous means full of mountains. So I'm looking forward to getting to know the country more. What about you?
I don't have a holiday planned. Well, I'm going to go to Ireland, but I'm not sure if I can call it a holiday because I'll be working a little bit. So a working holiday, let's say.
So if you're going to Ireland, and I think you're going for quite a few weeks, will we have enough podcasts recorded?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, we will. Because, listeners, don't worry. Although Craig and I will be apart, we won't be able to get together for a couple of months. We have already recorded quite a few podcasts in advance, and we will release one every week.
Of course, that means that if you're sending feedback during the summer, it might be a few weeks before we can put your feedback into a future podcast and reply to your questions and emails. But we will keep them all, and we do promise that when we're back together again after the summer, we will include all of your comments and feedbacks in future podcasts. But don't worry, there will be a podcast for you to listen to every Sunday.
Craig, we've talked about direct questions today, basic direct questions. Do you know somewhere where I could find out about indirect questions?
Yes, I do.
Where?
You see what happens with yes-no questions? You might just get a yes, I do, or no, I don't.
And then it obliges the person who asked the question to ask another one.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So where?
So yeah, if you go to inglespodcast.com/50, you can hear a podcast we did with our friend Nicola about indirect questions. We also did a podcast back in the day, episode 20, inglespodcast.com/20, question tags, how to use question tags in English. But I think we'll probably make another episode about question tags because I think we need to go more deeply into the subject of question tags. So that will be coming in the future. As always, we would love to hear from you. Reza, how can people get in touch?
You can get in touch with us on SpeakPipe, and you can ask us some questions on SpeakPipe. What would you like to know about us or English? Record a message and send it to us. That's our preferred way of contact. If you want to send us an audio voice message, just go to speakpipe.com/English podcast and leave your audio message. Craig, if people want, they could also write, couldn't they?
Yes, you could write to me, Craig, at inglespodcast.com or to Reza at belfastreza@gmail.com. And please do send us a voice message and ask us questions about anything you like, not necessarily grammar and vocabulary and pronunciation. You can also ask us about non-English things and we'll put your question in the podcast. Also, you're invited to visit the Mansion Inglés online store. That can be found at store.mansioningles.net, where you can find courses to download for the summer to improve your English.
As ever, we'd like to give a big thanks to all our sponsors on the Patreon program. Just to remind you, the Patreon program lets you sponsor us for as little as $1 per month. And if you do that, you will get instant access to recent audio transcriptions, which, as ever, are transcribed by Angelica. Thanks, Angelica. If you want to find out more about how you can do that, go to Patreon. That's Patreon, patreon.com/English podcast.
And before we go out the door, we'd also like to welcome our new Patreon supporters who have joined us this month. They are Jesus Acevedo, Carlos Martinez, Enrique Delgado, Luis Antonio Echeverria Diez, who has joined and also increased his support. So thank you very much, and thank you to all our wonderful Patreon supporters who continue to help us create transcriptions every week.
Great. What have we got on next week's episode?
From a listener question, we are going to speak about the wonderful country of Nicaragua. So please join us next week for that. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.